My name's Adam Penna, and I'm here to continue the conversation of 3D printing and additive manufacturing. Again, very excited today to have the guest that we have today. We have Filippos Voulpiotis, who is here from 3Dnatives, and that is an international online media platform for 3D printing. And of course, Filippos over here, who is now the Chief Business Officer since January 2020. And you've been there for a few years now, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much, Adam, for having us.
Yeah, welcome. Great to have you here.
And thanks a lot for the pronunciation of my last name.
Was it correct?
Close. But it's a difficult one.
Is it? Give me the real one. What is the full way to pronounce it? It's Greek, correct?
Yeah, I'll give you to its full Greekness.
Beautiful.
Filippos Voulpiotis.
Ah, good.
But you're close, though. You're close.
Yeah. Well, I have the Italian in me, so it's it's Italian heritage. I still have a grandmother who speaks with the accent and talks to me in Italian all the time. So
nice.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, no. Like we're talking about before we get started here, you and I have chatting a little bit over this pandemic time here. You've been over there at 3Dnatives. A lot of great things coming up. Of course, you have the big additive event coming up in 2 weeks on October 22nd, right. So we could talk about that in a little bit, but. It's been a wild year, man, and it's really interesting to see and meet people, and this whole pandemic has kind of opened up the virtual world for people, and people getting involved in different ways and communicating. I think that would have maybe not communicated so quickly. So that's like the good part. There's a lot of negative out there, but I try to focus on positive. So. How are things been for you over the last year, this 2020 being in the Chief Business Officer role there? I mean, it had to be an interesting year to be doing that. So what's that been like for you, buddy?
Well, I think we can all agree 2020 has been one of the craziest years we've seen, like in the general sense, but also in the business way of how things are operating. What you said earlier in regards to communication, I mean, yeah, there's been a whole digitalization, like a revolution we're going through. And, just the fact that we get to speak perhaps as often as we do now compared to how it would traditionally be, where we would speak once every quarter or even less whenever we would bump into each other at the trade show. I think these days are sort of behind us. Yeah. I remember the beginning of the year, I remember when I was planning ahead and everything in my mind was, okay, this is going to go smoothly. And then in March, the crisis really started hitting. And then we had to reevaluate pretty much everything we're doing in terms of our business model. As you said, we are the largest media on 3D printing in the world right now, in terms of how many visitors we get. And we have a quite complex business model too, because we are available in English, French, Spanish, and German. And we keep content local to these regions, which means that all of them are influenced in a different way. So we sort of need to manage all that at the same time, whilst keep expanding at the rate that we are, because we've been growing at a 40 to 6% rate for the past 3 years or so. So as you can imagine, either way, every year is a massive change. Mm-hmm. To manage the crisis in between that makes it even more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we've all gone through that, and that's a big thing, I think, now is people having to reimagine what they're going to be doing because it wasn't what everyone planned to be doing. And, hence me being here on this podcast, it's been a very interesting time. I think I'm
one of the positives that.
Yeah. Hey, getting to connect with people, obviously, when we're all distanced, has been nice. I'm very happy to have a community that we can connect and focus on the positive things, especially what's happening inside of 3D printing and additive manufacturing. And the manufacturing world in general has been really a positive thing over the last 6 months. So,
for sure. I mean, I think there's been with the beginning of the crisis, when there was an obvious freeze in the supply chains and how we couldn't move from country to country and do proper trading, and it's something that literally I cannot think of anyone who could have imagined something like that. Decentralized manufacturing technologies really had and have the opportunity to shine. And in general, as we know, the additive manufacturing industry in particular, there's just so much changing every year. Like we know we're on the rise, but it is incredibly important to understand that this is not only just in a revenue sense, but it's also massively in an R&D, like how many materials out there, how many technologies are launched, how many patents, like there's just so much going on. And if we were to shy away from all that progress because of a pandemic that doesn't allow us to meet each other or perhaps visit our clients or whatever it might be. It would just, it would mean, it would be a disaster for an industry like ours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great unknown, because obviously we're lucky that we do have the virtual interaction right now, and things can continue to open up and communicate inside of even, businesses and our homes and the places where people are that used to. I remember when people used to not turn their camera on most of the time, inside of conferences and meetings in general. And now it's that human interaction. I want to see somebody else, I want to see how someone else is doing, how their life's been.
Of course.
Connect that the little extra step of seeing the visual more than
it's
just
human,
the audio.
though,
Yeah,
isn't it? Like, just from the communication, just now seeing you, perhaps just from the way you'll move your hand or your body posture, it just makes a difference. And at the end of the day, like, don't get me wrong, I am 100% up for all this communication, but at the end of the day, I think we all like the physical communication. When we go to the shows, there is a reason why they are so successful. I would love to just be there now and have a beer with you and have a chat. We can't quite do that, but the alternatives, there are levels. We could be just speaking on the phone or actually see each other. And much like, and I guess we'll go over that in a bit, but in media, there's been a transformation over the past few years where, at first it was just the text format of, let's say, some news would be enough. But then we saw the last 3 years, webinars are like tremendously popular, because you get to see the expert that, it's not just a quote that you read. Nothing wrong with the first, but the latter just allows you to have a better understanding in certain things. And then perhaps a step even further, in virtual events, like, you actually get to interact with each other, network, like, have fun. It's not a one-way route. And I think there's going to be just more and more progress in this, because let's be honest, this situation doesn't change next month. It doesn't change next quarter. We need to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a big part of it. I know that even the little connections that I've made over the last 6 months, people that I never would have spoken with, now that I'm connecting with. Even last week, I was involved in like a study panel that was looking at 3D printing and looking at the juxtaposition against some other industries like robotics and some of the software that's going on out there, and seeing, what are the similarities, what's happening. It was Catherine Tucker over there at work. Yeah. And that whole kind of going through that whole exercise made me look at, two things kept popping up, which were really big. And I was like, it's across most industries, and it's education and security. People, like we're talking about, this is a different world in the virtual stuff. And then when you get into especially the bigger business or some of the larger aerospace or even medical companies that don't have the ability to connect as easy as everyone else does, there's certain rules of having open data and all that kind of stuff like that. It's a different world. And so there's had to be a security issue of what's going on, people just feeling safe, like they can talk about things and can be open and can open up their camera. Yeah. It's a different thing, and everyone's quickly had to adapt that. I see some of the old, brick and mortar companies where it's just, you go into the office and only the people that work there are from around there, and they are in the office every day. And that's not the way it is right now. A lot of people are working from home, not working in the office. So that's been a big change. But I see companies now expanding out and looking to even hire, remote workers because of the capabilities that remote workers have. It's a wild transformation right now, but I think it's a good thing. That's a positive thing.
I don't think it's a black or white thing. It's not always either this or the other, but not being agile is not an option anymore.
Yeah.
Working from home, we can see, is just like, it's not just a trend, it's just a different way of doing business. And right. Especially when you see some of the big giants out there just, using work from home strategies for majority of their audience, of their employees and so on, like Facebook and Amazon and Google, just sending people home, like as early as May, they sent them home until the end of the year, and things like that.
Yeah, big steps.
At the end of the day, the market is harsh. I think the market is harsh and honest. Like if the value is there, fair enough. If, you could have your employees working 14 hours a day in the office and not being productive, and you could have them being home with their children and doing the work that they would in 14 hours, doing it in 8, or,
Yeah.
it really depends.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It does depend. Just like a 3D print, it depends on the machine, it depends on the material, it depends on the application. There's a lot of variables that go into what's happening out there, and hopefully people are kind of clicking into their next evolution. I think I was lucky on that. It seems like I've started to evolve pretty quickly with this digital transformation.
You surfed the wave early.
Yeah, I got on that wave and keep surfing
Nice.
it right
Good
in.
for
Yeah,
you, man.
yeah, man. Yeah, you were right. You were right there. So, it's good stuff. And I know we're talking about, a bit about the events and how things have changed. I know we were talking in the past also about how we collect leads out there and what companies are going through in this transformation, because we don't have the big trade shows to go to anymore. Things have been more virtual, but it's a very interesting kind of thing when you don't know that the person came and sat down at the booth and those type of things. What is changing now to get those leads and to interact with the customer and to find, the right customer, and for the right customer to find you? It's been difficult. And I think, like you said, webinars have been a big, proponent of moving things forward. The virtual conferences we're having, your virtual conferences coming up. So there's a lot of good things happening, but I think it's been a challenge to find out,
Definitely.
and especially in the business climate, where people are very cautious to invest in such a large technology. There's that middle ground of, what is a pure lead and what are people doing to collect that now that we're not in the same, the same setup that we had.
No, 100%. It's exactly as you said it. And let's not forget, 3D printing is very cool. Like the nature of 3D printing is cool, and it's a trendy word and a buzzword often used and so on. But let's not forget, at the end of the day, it's still manufacturing. Yep. And manufacturing, can often be quite old-fashioned in the way, that it is run. And trade shows, don't get me wrong, I love trade shows. I absolutely do. Like even me personally, but also 3Dnatives, we produce a lot of content at trade shows. We shoot videos, we take interviews. Like it's a big part of our yearly plan. And me personally, as chief business officer, I travel to multiple countries and meet lots of people. Like I really like the experience. But the concept of the trade show and the structure of a trade show has been around for centuries, literally centuries. Like it's something that, okay, surely is adjusted and so on, but the concept is there. Now, when it comes to lead generation, I think the world is changing so rapidly that a lot of companies just don't get the grasp of like what the next step should be. It's easy to remember what is familiar, and change is scary. I know that for sure. Mm-hmm. But acquiring leads is a difficult thing to do, especially in the additive manufacturing field, where usually you're not talking about a 0-minute decision-making process. Usually sales cycle can be up to 6 and 12 and 18 months when you're talking about large machinery and so on. It's not an easy thing to do. So you really need, if you have a niche market, you really need to be targeting them directly. And this is what I really don't get with some companies nowadays. Like we've seen it, we know it, it has been proven, but somehow some companies remain like rather commercial in their communication, which just leads them nowhere. Like very often it's just something that backfires. And I think now is the chance, and I really see it as a chance rather than a crisis. Now I feel like it's raining opportunities, and the early adopters and the ones that are agile enough will take advantage of them and will come out on top. And unfortunately, with the upcoming financial crisis coming and so on, we know the next few years are not going to be easy. So I really feel if you're not agile today, unfortunately, you might not be there tomorrow. And I know it sounds bad and harsh, and I don't want to say it, but it's just the reality of things. The market is the market at the end of the day. So the whole digitalization process, it's not something that I believe companies can just step back and say, oh, it will be over in X amount of time and then we'll be strong again. Because if you don't start your sales cycles now, you're not going to have sales next year. And by the year after that, you're led nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's the pipeline, the pipeline of your leads. And it's right, like you were talking about, trade shows have been around forever, and you were right on the money when you said the market. It's been the marketplace. We're all familiar with marketplace even before these large trade shows of the machinery or the equipment that's being sold. It's a general marketplace where people go, they see each other, they touch
Since
the product.
ancient years.
Yeah. It's a very it's been around as long as there's people that can meet up together and trade things. So yeah, it's an interesting evolution right now to see what companies are really stepping into the future with that. And to be honest, I've seen a lot of the startups most quickly adapt. A lot of the more startup mode companies have been quicker to adapt than some of the larger companies. But I think some of the larger companies may think they have the money and time to do it right, do it correctly, kind of invest in the proper channels, the proper ways of building it. So we're starting to see them also rise, now 6 months later and stuff like that.
6 months later, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to judge anyone, by the way. I mean, it's not always easy. In a startup, in theory, you have more freedom to quick, faster, and so on. And also in a startup, you don't have that peace of mind of I have the budget, because usually you just don't have the budget.
Yeah.
In a startup, you rely heavily on the funding. So if you're not quick, then it becomes a lot more short term for you. But yeah, as you said, even the big guys now, 6 months later, it's still within reach.
Yeah.
But if they wait longer.
Yeah, that's the big question mark right there. That's for sure. I mean, we've been all going through our own kind of evolution. And so it's interesting. I know we're up against a lot right now. We're talking very loosely with things, but like you were saying, you don't want to be too pessimistic, but hey, we have a big election in the US coming up in November that, one way or another, things still will have to rise after that, and it's going to be interesting to see how that rolls out, and also going into now the, I'm going to be a little bit of Debbie Downer here, but I mean, we're looking at, the cold and flu season coming up, with everything happening too, and
we need to be realistic, Adam.
Yeah.
You said it earlier in the beginning that this is a positive podcast, and that's great. And all up for that. But at the same time, we need to be pragmatic about how things are going. Because at the end of the day, in business, if we just, believe in the most positive scenarios of everything, we might, not see what's coming.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I agree. It's been interesting to see that roll out right now. And so what have you seen on your side? I mean, as far as now possibilities, the trade shows now that we're going virtual, there's so many things I think that have to be overcome. Like we're talking about, it used to be you can go maybe in a breakout session and go meet the person and talk to them. And I see that those kind of things happening, introductions or maybe tapping someone on the shoulder who's at an event. It's like we're talking to somebody else about, it's like the people you meet in the hallway, the people you meet in the elevator, the people you meet when you're having, something to eat or something to drink. There's all these little exchanges that go on that somehow, I don't want to say duplicated, but have to be represented again in a different way inside the virtual world. So definitely. I see that's a big challenge. And I'm sure you've been addressing a lot of the challenges, figuring out how that can be done. So talk about that. What have you looked at differently as a way of engaging the person that's coming to a trade show, a virtual trade show?
Well, it's a very, very interesting question. And I think it's also one that many people have skipped, because often it's just a matter of saying, I have the end product, the product being the event, but haven't really thought of all these things. Because it's what you said, I think, personally at least, like the details, the tap on the shoulder, the let's have a beer after the trade show, like these details here and there are like what makes the event enjoyable on a human level.
Yep.
Because so common that business is done after the show, when you just relax with someone. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you how things shaped up, because it's actually quite interesting. Back in March, I was in Berlin for AM Forum, and it was a 2-day event, and in between the 2 days was when Trump came out and said, okay, all Americans in Europe need to come back. And it was like the first, if you may, like we knew about the COVID, but it was the first like big shocking thing, because really overnight half the booths just left.
Close it down.
Exactly, the pavilion was like empty. And I remember I remember speaking with friends and partners and so on, and thinking, okay, Q2 is probably not going to have events. Like that's how we were thinking then, just Q2. But it was literally right before AMUG, and Rapid would be the month after that, and we had so many things planned for those. And as I said, for 3Dnatives as well, like we produce so much content on those, so it's a big part of how we plan out our activities for the year. And I remember thinking, okay, Q2 is probably not gonna have any events. What do we do? Like, how, as a community, how are we gonna stay together? Because for us as media, it's massive part of our role to keep the community together. Like right now we surpassed the milestone of 1 million unique monthly visitors on 3Dnatives.
Nice. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Which is unheard of. Like the number is crazy. And we really want to make sure that all these people, they can know what the latest trends are, but also get a better understanding of the technologies, speak with each other and so on. And I remember thinking back then, okay, webinars are not going to be enough. like my first thought was, okay, webinars for sure, but they're not going to be enough because as I was saying earlier, it's a one-way thing. They're great. I love webinars. They can be so good. And if the speakers are good and the Q&A is good, it's great. But you don't have that networking aspect in them. It's mainly sitting in front of your computer, listening to the experts, which again, great, but you don't have the interaction that, let's say, you and I have right now. It's different. So basically, I came back to Paris, where we're based at 3Dnatives, and I remember speaking with Janet from Link 3D, and we said, okay, how about we do the first virtual 3D printing show, or however that sounds or could be, because it's like a very brand new idea. Like, because okay, there've been virtual events out there, but we hadn't seen anything in 3D printing before, and we didn't exactly know where to start from, and we didn't know what mistakes to avoid and like how it could look like. It was just very interesting experience because we just literally start from scratch. And as you said, the thought is, how can we take advantage of the best aspects of a physical event and transform them into a digital format? So we launched, as you probably remember, DAM back in April, the Digital Additive Manufacturing Marathon, a crazy project of basically a virtual trade show that was going for 26.2 hours. Let me just say, I would not advise you organize an event for 26.2 hours.
Right, that was wild. I remember that. That was really wild.
The amount of work that was put into this. But it was the first one, and it was massively successful, like tremendously successful. Everybody was talking about it. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't perfect.
Right.
Like there were things here and there that we could have done better for sure, but there was such a thirst in the market for something like that. It was just a perfect proof of like what we thought actually happening, because people were just so happy to see each other, so happy to network with each other. For those of you that might not know what DAM was like, it was essentially a trade show where we had the multiple virtual stands that people could freely jump into and jump from one to another. So if Adam was at this table, I could be speaking with him, and then I jump onto the 3D Systems table and I speak with people there, and then I jump to another company and so on. And it's just that the freedom of going from one booth to another that you would have at the physical trade show. So that was back in April, which sounds like ages ago now.
I know. It feels like the last 6 months have been more than a year. It's wild.
Yeah. So that was back in April, and straight after the event, we saw like it was overwhelmingly popular. Like even just from the feedback forward we sent, people loved it. And we immediately launched our very own events brand in 3Dnatives, the Additive, without the E in the end.
Gotcha. And there it is. Yes.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying earlier. So we launched Additive, and we said, okay, we need to perfect this model, because there's just so much that could be done with this. Like the option of connecting people in that way can be phenomenal. So very quickly we launched Additive France and we did did a virtual event specific to the French market back in June. And then pretty much the same thing, overwhelmingly popular. People loved it. You know, we didn't have enough seats. We broke the capacity of how many people we could have in it. Yeah. Unfortunately, we had to say to exhibitors, sorry, there are no more slots left. Like all these good problems to have in a way.
Yeah, good problems to have, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, international companies were asking, okay, how can we do that for another market or perhaps for another industry and so on. So we did another one for the Spanish market last month. Very similar story, smashed the targets, people loved it, etc. And every time we do this, there's always improvements. You know, we always, in the debrief after each event, we sit down and we think, okay, how could this be even more enjoyable for attendees and exhibitors alike? And every time we improve things and we improve things. Now, the event we're doing in a couple of weeks, the 22nd of October, is going to be our 4th event, which, as you can imagine, it has given us the know-how of, you know, giving a better experience. Like, just to give you a small example, a lot of people were requesting for one-to-one chats, because in theory, if we were now at your virtual booth, all booths have a capacity of up to 6 people, which means that anyone could freely come in. And frankly, that's great, because that would mean that we can have a better conversation flow and, you know, more input and so on. But every now and then you just want to have a private chat, you know, just speak with someone and, you know, not be heard from anyone. So for this event now, we introduced one-to-one business meeting tables. So if you are at someone's booth and you just want to go and speak privately without anyone possibly jumping in, you say, shall we go there? Yeah, perfect. Let's go. Like, you know,
like reserving a meeting room at a trade show, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And these combine to literally 1,000 little details here and there from, well, just from the fact that we have, you know, all the tables there. Like, virtual allows you to do so many great things. You can just double click and change floor and go to whatever booth you want. Like, you know, I remember last year in Formnext, we were shooting some videos for some of our clients, and we had to go from the far side of the trade show to the other end. And this was literally 15 minutes walking distance.
Yeah.
And rapid walking as well.
Yeah.
And I remember we had to calculate like our meetings accordingly, because we knew, okay, it's going to take us 15 minutes to get there. I have 15 to 20 minutes to do this and that. Whilst now it's just, okay, I'll click and I'm there.
Yeah. Hey, got to look at that. That's a positive thing right there. That those walks in between trying to get places when you have meetings is always a tough thing to do when you're at the actual trade show. So
yeah. Especially the big ones.
The big ones. So that's a big bonus. I know that's a great event. I'm looking forward to seeing that event take place on the 22nd. I mean, that sounds like you've gone a lot to details that some of these other shows didn't have, and taking it to the next level. And that's the beautiful thing I see, is the evolution of these virtual events. You know, like some of the bigger ones that are coming up, like we're talking about the Type Conference in January. It's had a long time to plan, you know, and it's still a bit out. So by the time it gets here, there'll be a lot of great things going on at that event. So it's good to see that planning, because like you were talking about, when all this happened, when all the big halt happened at the end of March, everyone was quickly coming up with solutions virtually. Not everyone, but people were coming up with solutions virtually. But there was a lot of hiccups, a lot of things that were missing. You know, it was great that we were able to do it, but everyone was talking about what they can't do, you know? So it's tying that bridge of, you know, what we can do virtually, or what we can add into the experience when you're at one of these virtual events, to make it that much of a stronger experience and get more out of it. So I did have a question there, though, when we were talking about the experience inside of the event. So you were talking about being there and having the ability to like schedule some time with somebody one-on-one. What's going on like post-show? Is there like anything you're doing additional as a follow-up to what people have seen? I'm assuming there will be the video will be available for the attendees, or how is all that look post-event?
So that's indeed a very interesting question, and I think it goes in the list of things that will continue being improved moving forward. Like I don't see a scenario where we can expect perfection from something that, you know, started earlier this year. Even for ourselves, like we didn't even have it planned, you know, for our activities of the year, and now it's become such a massive thing. Post-event, what we do, which we didn't do in the beginning, basically for each of our events, we create an event on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And basically what we see there is that the community is forming every time. So they get to exchange information with each other. Exhibitors can go in there and say, you know, we'll be talking about ceramics, come visit us. Or, you know, if you have questions about high performance polymers, we'll be at table 205, or, you know, things like that. So basically we get the conversation going, and even post event, these contacts are there for people, you know, if they want to connect, if it's someone new that you meet, basically you have this thing in common, and perhaps you start a relationship from there. That could then, you know, be followed in a one-to-one conversation outside of the event, just between, you know, the people that were just members of the group. Other than that, post-event, what we do as 3D natives, we like numbers quite a bit. I mean, I love stats and numbers and graphs and so on. So we always post like an overview of the event. So for people to understand, like, how many people were there, from what sort of companies, like basically the profiles for, sure, you know, to get a better understanding. And yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. What we see is that the vast majority of people who attend our events are then eager to attend our next one as well. Yeah. So there is sort of a continuation going on. Traditionally, trade shows, especially the big ones, they're once a year, and there are a lot of organizational things that need to be managed, like just from the venue itself, which is like a very big thing to manage. It makes sense why an event would be once a year, but when it's virtual, it could be more often. You know, it could be more focused on something. You know, we have a lot more freedom there. So I very much like the idea of people enjoying our events, signing up for the next one every time, and just, you know, be happy to create a community that we can see every once in a while. I don't know if that means once every 3 months or every 6 months or so, but we have a lot more freedom on what we can do.
Sure. Yeah, to expand that community and to really reach out and grow what's happening, grow the communication, making things available to people, letting them know where the resources are. Speaking of resources, I know you have a great website, right, where everybody could find this. It's 3dnatives.com, right? 3dnatives.com.
Yes, and, my friend, 3Dnatives.
Yeah, there you go, buddy. And you can find everything also on there for the additive digital world. That has its own website. It's additive with no E. That's ADDITIV.events/world, correct? That's right. That's the big website. So yeah, anybody that wants to, they could check on that. We'll definitely put a link to that in this conversation. One thing before we go, and one more thing before we go, I
go for it.
You know, like we said, you've been, was it the last 3 years working inside of the 3D printing world, right?
Yes,
and
that's right.
Obviously a lot of massive experience in those 3 years of bringing things up to par with what's going on with the virtual events right now and everything else that's happening at 3D Natives. So prior to coming into this industry, you know, I guess what brought you here and what made you so attracted to what's happening inside of the 3D printing industry?
Good question. So actually, I finished my studies in the UK, and then I was working there for a company. I was in sales. It was a company with camping gear. Mm-hmm. So I was in retail sales, and I was working in a store, eventually being promoted to store manager, and then after that, manager of the department of retail. So we had a chain of shops all around the UK, which was tremendously interesting. But after a certain point, to me, it was just crazy not being in new technologies. New technologies has been such a passion of mine since forever, mm-hmm. where even though it was super interesting what was happening in the UK, I thought to myself, okay, it's crazy. Like, I cannot not be there. Yeah. And of course, Paris has a very rich startup ecosystem. I could imagine myself being a startup. And I remember I found 3D Natives. I spoke with Alex, our CEO, And I told him, basically, just a narrowed down version of our chat was, look, man, we need to work together. Like
that's awesome.
There's stuff to be done. The industry is going to grow massively. 3D Natives just in such a good position. When I joined, just to give you an idea, when I joined in 2018, 3D Natives had, we were just celebrating our milestone of 250,000.
Oh, wow.
Visitors.
Okay. Yeah.
We just surpassed 1 million. We average about 1,150,000 right now.
That's awesome.
Like so much has changed, during these times. And I remember when I joined, I was saying, God knows, in 5 years, we could be honestly, there's just so much space for us to grow. And we're actually doing even better than we predicted. So I guess we must be doing something right.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I joined the world of 3D printing, and I immediately fell in love with it because I remember going to my first trade show and just loving everything around me, like from the printers to the prints to the people, like the passion. And that's another thing.
What was that first trade show? Just wondering.
Formnext.
Formnext, nice. Yeah.
It's Formnext, and it was just phenomenal. And I've loved it ever since.
Nice. It's good to hear that side. And I think that's really neat to know that there was people that actually opened up the world to you and reflected all of its excitement that was happening inside of the manufacturing and 3D printing world. It's a great place. I mean, I've been doing things over 20 years in manufacturing now, and the 3D printing side has been really exciting. I come from a CAD background in engineering, and I used to draw all the stuff a lot inside of aerospace and automotive. And when 3D printing came along and when it started to grow, everything that was happening was like, wow, there's a whole nother way to think about manufacturing with its own set of constraints, but a lot of freedom that you don't have in some of the other processes. So it's just, it's been a wild ride, and I think it's actually just starting. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens from here.
I think that's what most people see and are so excited, because there's just so much passion in the people of 3D printing. It's just so much. And to be honest, I even myself, I feel proud to be just a tiny part of this revolution, because we are living a revolution and we are part of it, and things change. And like, even just reading about the history of manufacturing, looking back 10, 20, 30 years, and just trying to imagine what we're going to be thinking in 2050, looking back at 2020, like there's just so exactly. And as you said, it's just the beginning. Like, possibilities are endless.
Yeah. That's what keeps it cool and keeps it fresh. Hey, Filippos, it's been awesome talking to you. And
likewise, my friend.
I'm looking forward to what's going on with Additive Digital World on October 22nd. So those who haven't registered,
see you then.
Yeah, get in there and register for that event. And thanks a lot. Really good talking to you today. You have a good one.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Adam. Have a lovely one, bud. Cheers.
Gonna be